Check, check, check. It's good. Seems all right. We're gonna be all right. Oh. Oh, but that's not feedback. That's something. That's like interference or something.
It has interference.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Between the humana and the
Hello. See now, this button fell off, and now I can't. Hey, welcome. Can you hear me? They're actually pretty tight. I mean, do we even need it? I guess we need it for the thing. For the stream, but you know, we're against the stream. Oh, ba-dum-bum. I actually was against the stream for a long time, against this stream, but no, I've given in.
Oh, literally against the stream.
Against streaming.
Yeah.
That's going to be my thing. I might have a break-off song that's going to be called Against the Streaming. Ah, good to see you. Missed you on Monday.
Oh, yeah, I was at a car actually.
Perfect, look at that. But then look at that, and you thought you wouldn't get a chance to see me, so I came on Wednesday. Just 'cause. Well, I guess we'll start, yeah? It's official now. So, hello, everyone. I'm Gene, if you don't know me. I teach usually Monday night. And, you know, we used to teach at the old location. I've actually been teaching at ATS for like 12 years, so. But you may not know me, and just going to cover for Chandra tonight. I know she said you guys have been working on the, could I even forget the word, the Tibetan teachings, the Lojong. So I'm not familiar with those. So we won't do that. We're just going to do just the old Theravadan type of stuff. Nothing coming out of there?
I need that. I'm hearing it here.
Yeah. Check, 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 check.
Again?
Check, 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 check.
Thank you.
Okay, is that better? Yeah? Thanks for asking. So we'll just start, we'll sit. It's the same format, right? We just sit for a half hour and then have a talk. So I like to usually say before we start, and those of you who have, are there people who've never sat with me before? People who've like, who's this guy? Oh, cool, okay, good. You're gonna love this. Just kidding. Oh man. It's important to kind of have, I think, the right orientation, the right attitude towards this practice. And what I always like to remind us of is that we're not trying to, when we sit right now, we're not trying to achieve anything or become anything or like, you know, get some state or like get to that awesome, relaxed, meditative feeling. That's really the wrong approach. We don't want to put like striving. We don't want to approach meditation the same way we tend to approach other things in life with this kind of grasping and chasing. And, you know, so much of regular life is kind of based on this idea that like, I don't know what, I'm here, but it would be better to be over there. And I'm here and I got to get over there, whatever over there means, right? And I'm looking for a better experience. And that really creates all this striving and tension and really pulls us out of the present moment. And so we don't want to, I mean, it's actually very understandable that when people come to meditation, they often approach that the same way because that's the basic program. So I want to just remind us that that's not the idea here. All we're doing, think of it as, at least the way I think of it, is that it's like this sacred space, and we're like going into the temple, so to speak, which is, this room, but really this kind of inner temple where like, hey, I'm going to just sit here and be with my experience in a kind of sacred way. That what we're doing is bringing a kind of reverence and a kind of honoring to whatever's happening right here, right now, and not looking at it as something to be fixed or something to be changed, but actually something to be received. Something to really open ourselves to and be like, hey, with some like kindness and compassion and love, like, okay, let me receive this moment. Let me just kind of be with existence. Let me just be with the sacredness of this life for 30 minutes. You see what I mean? So it's kind of a different attitude of like, no, let me mold this into what I want it to be. There's a way that, our general orientation is kind of sort of, I don't know, maybe call it like expressive, like I've got these ideas, I've got thoughts, I've got agendas, I've got like plans, I want this, I want that, and I'm going to make it be like, and it's sort of, I see it as kind of energetically, it's kind of going out. It's like it's from in going out. And this is actually, I would say, impressive. Like, let me receive this. Let me very humbly just kind of check this out and see what's happening. And one of the things that really helps that and supports that is to not assume that you know, but to actually take a more humble position. Be like, I don't know what this is. I was like, oh, I feel some pain. Like, well, what is that? Let me check that out. Like, whether it's physical or emotional. So let me come at it with kindness, like the way you would, I don't know, approach an animal or something. Like, okay, well, let me be respectful and kind of see if I can help this moment feel safe for me. Does that make sense? So with that in mind, I'll guide us through it, but that's just the orientation I wanted to invite you into. So with that said, find a comfortable posture. Something that's, that's relaxed but kind of alert. Something in between, like, was kind of not strained, but not like totally slouchy, relaxed to the point of, something in the middle. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. And just start by bringing your awareness to your body. Again, letting go of right or wrong, or there's no wrong way. There's no experience that you're supposed to be having or not having. And with a sort of curiosity and kindness, let yourself sense what's happening in your body. And even if something's painful or uncomfortable, see if you can not make an enemy out of it, but rather make some room for it. watching different sensations, different experience in the body. Now take a minute and see what's happening in the mind. Again, without it being anything being right or wrong. But just in this moment, how's your mind? Is there a lot on your mind? Not a lot? Like a lot of thoughts or not? Is it something in the past? Is it about something in the future? It just is what it is. I mean, at this point, your mind is in some state. We just want to be aware of it. And then take a moment and check on how your emotional state is. Again, absolutely no right or wrong. But just how is it right now? How's the emotional field, so to speak? And again, just letting it be the way it is. We're not trying to fix it or change it, but rather allow it and meet it with kindness, compassion, curiosity. And now in the middle of all this, right, you got sensations, thoughts, emotions. You may also notice that your body's breathing. And we use this awareness of the breath as a kind of home base, a kind of anchor to help us stay here now. And you don't need to get rid of the thoughts or make them go away. But just see if you can let the breath kind of be more in the foreground. And all the thoughts and feelings and sensations, you can let them just recede a little bit into the background. Like they're still there. But let yourself actually focus on the experience of breathing. inevitably your awareness will get usurped by the thoughts. This is okay, I mean, this is completely natural. And simply when you notice this has happened, just come back to the breath. Coming back. the breath. Do you guys usually take a bathroom break or just go right into it? Bathroom break? Yeah? Okay. So I'm curious, were you guys able to kind of feel into that, kind of getting into that, that orientation I talked about in the beginning, that kind of attitude of kind of opening to this sacred, taking the sacred time to just be with this moment, just to be with what is. And I don't know, how did that go, or did that make sense? Did it not make sense? Anybody got any questions about that? Yeah.
I have a question about when you say that we shouldn't go with the attitude of like trying to control it. And I get what you were saying about being open to receive. But what I was wondering is, I thought my understanding was that it's good to go with an intention.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different kinds of meditations.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. No.
what do you do with that?
Absolutely. There's many different kinds of meditations and different kinds of intentions, and in that one, I was kind of inviting you to try the intention of receiving. Right. But I mean, there could be others. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what. Yeah, this may kind of sound strange, but if you hear it more on a feeling level, like I found that it goes a lot. Most of my life, or most of my meditating life, for many years, the attitude was kind of like, what can I get from meditation? Right? Like, no, I'm doing this, and this is going to be good for me. I'm going to like learn to relax. So I'm going to really get something from it. And I know this may sound kind of weird, but like, I find it goes much better when I arrive with this question, like, what can I give to it? You know, not like, oh, hey, there's this practice that I'm essentially, this sounds much more sinister than be like, I'm sort of utilizing this for personal gain. I mean, it's fine, you know, it's an exercise, but I find that there's this really beautiful feeling that happens when I'm like, no, like, what can I offer almost? It's like kind of a devotional feeling. And for me, it's a little hard to name what exactly I'm offering to, but I don't know, like the moment, existence, true nature, beingness, I mean, God, if you want to use that word very, you know, kind of broadly. I don't mean like a theistic kind of God. And then there's a kind of, it's very peaceful that way, and it's sort of heart-opening, actually. Because when I approach anything with this kind of like, what can I get out of it? You know, there's a lot of suffering in that. It's very graspy, and even if there's this like, well, am I getting everything I'm supposed to get? Maybe I'm supposed to get more, you know, like I'm supposed to go better than that, or like I'm trying to achieve something. But in some ways it's, I think there's a kind of, it's very subtle in a way and unconscious, but this attitude of almost taking or achieving or getting. And conversely, the kind of attitude of giving, devotion, offering, it just feels really different in the body, you know? Like it's interesting, I don't have kids, but I have a niece and nephew that I'm very close with. And when I go to visit them, like, I'm amazed at the energy I have to do things for them. Like, I hate waking up early, but if I got to take them to school, like, I don't know, I just do. Because it's not for me, like it's something for them, and somehow, it's interesting, I feel so much, it's like bigger than me, there's some like broader energy moving through me that's like, you gotta take these kids, you know, and I'm up. Like, but man, you know, when I'm doing something just for me, like I barely have the energy to do that kind of stuff. Unless I tap into some kind of point of view that it's not so much for me as for, again, it's a little hard to talk about because it's sort of a little mysterious what it's for, but even with meditation, there's like I actually kind of go, okay, for me personally, it's this, okay, I'm going to stop all my stuff and I'm going to bring my attention to life. I think of it as almost like life itself, like this life force of being. And that I'm offering my attention, essentially, my presence. And I'm going to really hang out with this and receive it. But offering, I don't know. Yeah, I'm also a therapist, and it's almost like, I don't know, it's like being in session with like life itself. Like, okay, let's just, it actually reminds me of this really nice quote. I think it was the stories that it was a reporter talking to Mother Teresa years ago. And he asked her, when you pray, what does God say to you? And she says, oh no, wait, hold on, I'm gonna mess this up. Hold on, how does it go? Oh no. He said, what do you ask for? Like, what do you ask for when you pray? And she said, oh no, I don't ask, I just listen. And he said, oh really? Okay. And so what does God say? You know, if you're listening. And she said, oh, he doesn't say anything either, he just listens. and it was really big. Apparently then she said, and if you don't understand that, I can't explain it to you. But I can feel it. Can you kind of just feel the vibe of that? There's something like, just kind of hearing that, like there's some kind of openness that happens in that. You know, I don't know, I imagine this like little Mother Teresa and this like, you know, sort of enormous God, and they're both like, there's something about when I imagine that, there's this sense like you can just hear a pin drop, right? Like it's so delicate, it's such a delicate, you know, like these, like God and like Mother Teresa just both like really listening, you know? And that kind of attention, that kind of, call it intentional attention, is a very, very powerful thing. And I think a lot of times it's probably one of the most profound offerings you can make. And it's one of the things we have that we can offer is attention, of that kind of attention. I mean, it's funny, we even call it like paying attention, like it's a currency, right? You're like, don't, you know, pay attention. And so to kind of take some control of our attention, you know, normally an untrained attention is kind of all over the place. It's like an untrained dog. It just kind of runs around, sniffs here, sniffs there. You know, it's all over the place. And what this practice is about is actually kind of learning to gather that, you know, and focus it. And actually, like I said, I've been really getting into this feeling of like gathering it and actually offering it. And that really, again, like I could just feel the difference, like even just talking about it right now, as I sort of reflect on it and talk about it, there's a really nice feeling that comes over me. That's very different from the feeling I actually have a lot of, believe me, plenty of times in my life where I'm like, oh, I gotta get this and I gotta get there and what the hell is this and oh, this isn't right and it's all like me trying to make things the way I want them to be, and you know, it's very forceful in a way, and it's kind of the opposite of humble. It's very sort of, I don't know, demanding and very, you know, like I know best, as opposed to sitting back and receiving. But this offering of attention, I mean, it even, like I also play music, for example, and man, that's something, I don't know if there's any musicians here, but man, when I approach that with this like, yeah, I gotta do this, and I gotta be good, and I gotta get better, and it's so sort of narcissistic, or what's a better word, like it's so self-centered, it's really about me, and how good or not I am, or And then other times I can kind of get into this state where it's like, no, it's like a devotion of sound, where I'm here, I'm offering my attention to sort of music as this kind of entity. Like, you know, like I think of like there's just this thing called music. It's existed for thousands of years. You know, and different people have played it along the way, but really it's like, I mean, one can argue like what really exists, the humans or the music, you know. And then I can kind of get into this mode of like, no, I'm kind of a devotee of sound, and I'm here to kind of receive the sound and, you know, hold it and care for it. And oh my God, it's just night and day. Like when I can get into that mode, things flow. It's very beautiful. It's very settling, and there isn't all this grippy, graspy feelings. Do you guys resonate with this? Do you know what I'm talking about? And you can approach anything this way. But this practice in meditation, I mean, you know, like what we started off is that it's very easy to approach this in that same kind of what's in it for me sort of way. And I did for years. I mean, I always joke and say, like, I feel like when I look back on, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 23 years or something. I mean, I just did it so wrong for so long. I mean, I just really, when I look back on it now, I'm just like, holy shit, like, God, if I can go back in time and tell, but the thing is, I wouldn't listen to myself now. That's the problem. Like, if I went back in time and met myself, I wouldn't believe me.
I thought you said there wasn't any wrong.
What's that?
There wasn't any wrong.
No, I said that what's happening, there's no right and wrong in what's happening. Like when you tune in and you're like, oh, I have this feeling, like right now, like I have this headache, and I was sitting there, and you're like, oh, this sucks, I have a headache, that's bad and wrong, how do I get rid of it? I mean, there's nothing right or wrong about the inherent experience. How we approach it, how we respond or react to it, I would say, maybe to use a better language, I would say it could definitely be skillful or unskillful. And it could definitely be very unskillful. Do you see the difference?
Okay, but now I'm sitting back and trying to judge it how skillful and unskillful I just was and what to do about it.
Mm-hmm. So, you want to walk through that?
I was tuned out a lot.
Mm-hmm. So now let's respond to this line of inquiry in a skillful way. So I'm not saying when you say, wow, I was tuned out a lot, then that's like, oh, and that's bad and wrong. I don't mean that. But like if you said, wow, like that would actually be very unskillful. If you sat there like beating yourself up for being tuned out a lot, I would say, yeah, that's not good. That's not skillful. You're actually like hurting yourself doing that. But if it's like, I was tuned out a lot, like, oh, it's like that sometimes. Okay, interesting. I wonder what that's about, or you know, like seeing that with some compassion, like, and being tuned out isn't, it's not a crime, you know.
I guess though, I'm just kind of, I don't want to like, go down the loophole too long, but start using the wrong thing. I mean, it's sort of like we're going to start judging the judging parts, and it feels like there's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, and that's the thing. That gets quite painful and contracted. I mean, maybe me saying I did it all wrong, I'm kind of being funny to some extent, but I mean, if I could rephrase that, I would say if I had, let me take a more compassionate approach. It's hard to be compassionate for oneself. When I look back on it, okay, let me put it this way. When I look back on it, I think, I was quite insecure and feeling quite inadequate in some way when I was young, and was I think I believe that I could compensate for all that by like achieving some kind of spiritual greatness. And if I could become enlightened, if I could somehow, you know, be like the wisest person around, that would sort of redeem me. And so, you know, if that's how high the stakes are, can you imagine how much stress there was in my meditation? It's like, dude, like your value as a human being is writing on each breath. It's like, holy shit, man, this is a lot of pressure. So I mean, that's maybe a way for me to say it more compassionately, because when I say it that way and I think about it, I'm like, yeah, man, you know, like this poor kid who was basically scared in a lot of ways, really, and was really grasping for some kind of, you know, some kind of relief and something to fix it all. But man, that was not an attitude of what I was saying, like, hey, what can I give to this? It was very much, what can I get from this? Like, how do I win at this game of meditation? How do I win? How do I be like the best meditator? And you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I used to do these amazingly stupid things. See that? You're right. Check it out. It's interesting. Yeah, you want to see when I talk about myself, it's weird. Like, I would never say that to someone else. But I remember being on retreat. I used to do long retreats, like month-long retreats, and I would like, you know, at the end, the last sit, like then everyone kind of goes to bed, and then you can, it's like there's this free time where you could just sit late into the night if you want. And I'd go into the hall, and there'd be a couple other people. And I swear to God, it's so funny to say this, but I was like, I mean, I was in my 20s. I was like, all right, I'm going to be the last person here. I'm going to, like, I'm shutting, like, as the last person when I have to blow out the candles, I'd be like, I'm blowing out the fucking candles. And I would, like, sit there in this competition. I'm like, who's going to, and then, like, one person would leave, I'd be like, haha, he's out. Okay. And I was in this competition that, like, but it's funny, like, the other people didn't know that they were, like, these people were just sitting. They were like, little did they know they were losing to me. You know, and I would do it, and I would sit, like, for a really long period of time. But man, my mind was all over the place. And it was all about this, like I was competing with someone who didn't even know we were in a race, you know, like. But it was driven by these kind of like very kind of egoic needs that I was trying to fulfill through it. And, you know, again, I share this because I'm assuming a lot of you can relate to at least some version of that. But you know, it's that orientation is based on, you know, various beliefs we have about what is it we think is going on, like how we just like how we perceive reality, how do we, like, what is it that we think we're involved in? Like, I thought apparently I was involved in some competition, like that's how I was interpreting it. You know, looking back on it now, like, dude, I don't think this is a competition. Like, you know, this is a misunderstanding you've got. And it was driven by this idea that I was someone who was going to sort of triumph over my problems. Like, that's the narrative that I was involved in, right? Like, I'm this person, and I'm going to meditate and do all these other things, and I'm going to somehow, again, get from here to there. And there is going to be better than here. And it'll all be great once I get there, and it all sucks here. You know? So I mean, it makes sense why I was pretty miserable and very tense. And meditation wasn't very enjoyable at all. And again, like I said, it's funny to think, it's like, wow, well, if those are the stakes, yeah, man, that's a lot of pressure. Is it, you guys relating to any of this? Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely relate to that. But growing up in our culture, I mean, that's what America is.
Yeah.
Like, go get it. If I'm going to meditate, I got to be the best meditator, like, or don't do it at all. And it just runs so counter.
Yeah. You know, well, and that's why, you know, that's why it's going against the stream, right? I mean, that's why it's called against the stream. Because, you know, that's I mean, like Noah didn't think of that phrase. I mean, that's a Buddhist phrase. Like, That's what the Buddha called the practice. He actually called it going against the stream. Now, the thing that's interesting is that he didn't say that in America. He said that in India 2,500 years ago. So although I agree with you, like, it's definitely a very American thing, but it's also a very human thing. And apparently, like, I actually always find it amazing to reflect that these teachings are from, you know, what I assume was probably almost like a different planet. I mean, like 2,500 years ago in India, like, I imagine it was pretty different. And yet, I mean, that's the thing, but greed, hatred, and delusion, I mean, like everything he talked about and everything he pointed to, it's still here. So it seems like a lot of this is actually pretty universal and pretty inherently human, if not even, you know, maybe it even expands to animals and other beings too. Like maybe it's not even just human. So yeah, it's a profound practice to go against this very powerful stream. So when you see yourself doing that, or when you're seeing that, this is why it's nice to not, like, don't judge yourself, right? Because it's like, well, this is just the natural stream. But as we sit and as we practice, what helps is we can really start, you know, we sit, you know, why is mindfulness so important? Everyone's talking about mindfulness. You know, it's like this, well, the big thing with mindfulness is just, it's awareness, to just actually feel one's body and to feel kind of one's being and be like, well, how is this? And so when we tune into these things, that mode of being, of living, we actually start to become aware, like, wow, this is actually painful. Like, it's not just some kind of moral question, like, you know, hey, if you're a cool Buddhist, you don't do it like that. When you really tune into it, it's like, yo, this is actually physically painful. There's all this anxiety and tension in it, and there's this real, like, sense of lack, right? I mean, that's kind of what drives it. Like, no, I need to, like, this is not enough. I need to get it. I need to get something. You know? I think Jack Kornfield used to say, like, there's this feeling like, well, I don't know what it is, but this is definitely not it. You know, like it's somewhere else. And what we're really talking about, actually, is none of that. What we're talking about is cultivating and learning and kind of practicing how to allow this present moment, right? Not some better other future present moment, or even, you know, just some other present moment that's better than this one, right? Because that's the idea, and it's like, no, how can we love this moment? You know, how can we just be here? Which may mean accepting a bunch of stuff that sucks about it. Maybe it often includes, you know, like opening up to the headache, right? Like, I'm like, okay, well, apparently I have a headache right now. Cool. Let me feel it. How is it? Oh, kind of, there's some tension. And now I'll tell you, the more you do that, I got to admit, like, the headache actually relaxed quite a bit. The more I just, like, allowed it and just kind of sat with it. You know, hating on whatever is happening in the present moment just creates more and more tension. Actually, speaking of my niece and nephew, I was teaching this other person, this cousin of mine, and he went and he spent time with my brother and his kids. And at the time, my nephew was a baby, and he'd cry a lot. And he, you know, he started crying early in the morning, and my cousin was in the other room, and he woke up. But we'd been practicing together, and he actually had this great experience. I thought this was quite insightful. You know, the little baby was keeping him up and was waking him up, and he was like, oh, I can't get back to sleep. And then he realized that the actual thing that was keeping him up wasn't the sound as much as it was the anger at the baby or the sound, just like the irritation. And I'm like, fuck, like he saw that actually, oh wow, it's all this like anger and that's what's making the tension. And actually it makes sense is when you get angry, you know, that's like you're kind of threatened, so your body is going to actually increase energy, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm angry, I'm getting ready to fight. So it's like, yeah, it's going to be very hard to go to sleep for your body because it's getting ready to fight, right? Because you're angry. And so he said he just saw it so clearly that he just shifted it, and he just says, fine, I love this sound. Great, the baby's crying, bring it on, I love the baby, I love the sound. And he said I actually fell totally asleep, and the sound didn't even bother him. And you know, it's interesting because you see this like, I mean, my cat will sleep regardless of the noise I'm making. Kids will often fall asleep. I mean, that same baby would sleep through anything. And I think actually that's partially why, right? Like if my cat was sitting there going, oh, Jesus, he's making that noise again. and laid that whole like layer of offensive meaning of how, you know, this is really inconveniencing her. It would actually be triggering, right? But she's a cat, so she doesn't care, like whatever, you know. And sleeps fine. So that kind of, this way that we fight with what's happening, we fight with reality, we fight with our bodies, we're like, I don't like that, I'm going to fix it. It's such a rejection, you know, and that rejection is very painful, is what I'm saying, or what the Buddha said. It's not just like, oh, that's not right, or like, that's why I like that term, unskillful. It's just like, it's just not effective. I mean, you're welcome to do it. It's not against the law. But, you know, we're going to suffer. And we do suffer with that orientation. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to share something
Please.
that happens in my meditation. If it goes well, I can relax into it and not put conditions and not feel that I'm trying to achieve something. Then later, I find in my waking, regular life that I can be less reactive, and a kind of space opens up in which I can make choices about my reactivity, and that feels very fruitful. But then it's tricky because the next meditation, I'm trying to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
It gets in the way.
Totally. No, that's exactly what happens. But that fruitfulness is very nice to notice. That it does give us that freedom, right? It's like things kind of happen in slower motion almost, and you have choices. You know, and that's what actually the Buddha. There's a lot of teachings on this where he says so there's you're hit by some stimulus, right? Sound, feeling, whatever, like, and then there's a reaction. But in that there's a gap. I mean, and at first it's tiny. I mean, it feels like it happens instantly. But the more mindful you get, the more you can slow it down. That gap, exactly like you described. But the Buddha actually describes this, exactly what you're saying. That the gap can get kind of bigger. And in that gap, you start to have choice. And that's where you can be more skillful, right? And that's what they actually, in Buddhism, that's what they call wisdom. Panya is the word. But wisdom is actually that. It's like, oh, okay, so here it is, in this gap I have this choice, but I've, based on past experience, based on things I've learned, you know, a lot of times it's trial and error, no doubt. But you know, it's nice sometimes in that gap you'll be like, oh, it's this, hey, I always do that. That always turns out badly. Maybe this one time, let me try this other thing. You know, but like you said, you need some space for that. But then you said that then the next time you're trying to achieve that. And that's what attachment is, right? So the thing is the way you got there in the first place was not trying to achieve something. You just sat and said, great, I'm just going to allow this to be the way it is. I'm going to give up this whole fighting, struggling thing. I'm just going to bow to this, right? And then that yields all these kind of positive side effects. So then that's what happened. I mean, this is actually it's just inevitable. Like, we always laugh that if you ever have a really good meditation, so-called good meditation, like, it's almost inevitable that the next one's going to be really bad. Because you're going to try to make it like that one. You're going to be like, great, that was awesome, let me have that one again. You know? And And now it's like, well, but you're not doing it like you did it last time. Last time you had all this like surrendering and bowing. Now you're like, no, I want that again. And that's the opposite of that, right? Now you're grasping, demanding. It's all the things we've said. You know, just thinking about you for a second, you were saying, like, it's just kind of still rolling in my head what you described as like your process when you were the judging and the judging of the judging and all that. Because that's, I mean, you guys all relate to that? The judging of the judging of the judging? I think one of the best ways to work with it is just to see that and just actually be like, yep. Yeah, it's just like that. Like, wow, this is, yep, there's nothing I can do about this. This thing is just out of control. It's just judging upon judging upon judging. I remember this moment that I still like remember it as this kind of pivotal moment when I was a monk in Thailand, and been there for a while, and I remember like I was miserable. I was sitting there and I was just like, man, this sucks. Like I was still all neurotic and depressed and anxious and all these things, and I was just miserable, and I had this feeling of like, fuck, like I've sold all my possessions. I live in the forest in Thailand now. I've already done this. I did like tons of therapy and all this other stuff before that and all these other things. I remember having this moment, I was like, wow, I've done all of these things and I'm still totally miserable. And I remember having this moment where I was like, well, I guess I'm just fucked. And I remember actually having this feeling of like, you know, I guess maybe this is just hell. I live in hell. That's it. Like I thought it was all these other things, but maybe like that's it. Like I just live in hell, and like no matter what I do, I'm screwed. And there's really nothing I can do about it anymore because I've tried everything, and I'm still miserable. So okay. And I remember the craziest thing was that once I remember saying that, and it's kind of like something settled in me actually. It was kind of like I sort of gave up, you know? And I was like, well, I guess this is just hell, and that's how it is. Okay, and then in a way I was like kind of a little freer. I was like, well, I guess I'm done trying to fix it, because no matter what I do, none of this works. It works or even worse, it works for a little bit. You know how that is, right? Like I almost think it would be easier if it just didn't work. Like it works just a little bit to be like, yeah, and then, oh, no, this is... And then, hey, how do I get it back? Oh, but I had it. I had a good day. But it was kind of nice because it was just like this relaxation that hit me. And I was like, well, I guess this is just life in hell. Okay, so, well, there's nothing I can do about it, apparently. I don't know, what do they got here? Like, and then I remember looking around, there's all these people, like all these other monks, and I was like, hey, are you guys all in hell with me? Like, well, there's cool people around. That's kind of nice. And like, what else do we got? And it was just like, and suddenly like I was kind of free to just look around and be with what is, because I wasn't fighting it. And what I realized like later was like, dude, it's the fighting it that's making it hell. You're making it hell. You're turning it into hell because you're against everything. Especially yourself and your own experience and your own feelings, your own thoughts. It's like, it's all wrong, you know. So that's the kind of surrender that we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you don't, or do you mind me saying, your view sounds very one-sided, and I experience this as having two sides. So, I don't know, you probably phrase it, this is probably a matter of language more than other things, but like, I've definitely been on the extreme of like strive, gotta have it, gotta do it, otherwise I'm not okay.
Okay.
But at the same time, I mean, not at the same time, at other times, I've been at what I would call the other extreme of like, kind of similar to what you just said about like, I'm in hell, there's nothing I can do. Like learned helplessness, might as well not even, like why put in the effort for my well-being? It's, it's just doomed. And I can actually sit there for a long time and get worse and worse and worse and worse. I'm usually not so happy with that one. So the thing,
Yeah.
I'm currently on the strive side, and I really do feel that it's very helpful to like make a lot of effort for like my well-being.
Yeah, maybe you're misunderstanding my point. I didn't mean it like, I'm not, see the way you're talking about it in both cases, you're talking about a kind of like prescription of a way of life. Like, hey, this is how you should be. Yeah, strive, or no, don't strive. Just, I'm not talking about this as like, hey, you guys should go out and do something. I'm actually talking about when you're being and you're sitting, the way you're relating to this present moment. You see what I mean? Like actually the way you're relating to yourself and in this moment, like the way you're holding it, the way you're orienting it. I mean, in all of the cases, I actually am not a big fan of prescriptions for life on either direction, because I actually feel that kind of stuff, it really takes away from presence. It's like instead of being with what is, it's like, no, I've got this whole list of, like, I'm going to do this and do this, or maybe what you're saying, like, no, I'm not going to do these things. See, I'm always those things are very troubling to me, because it's like, and believe me, I've done it that way, but it's like, so I don't have to be present. I've got marching orders, I've got a prescription, I'm going to do it that way. And kind of, in a way, there's, in both sides, there's a kind of disregard for, but what's actually happening now? What's actually alive right now? So even in that story, I'm not saying, and therefore I walked around saying, okay, it's all hell, I'm not going to do anything. That was, in that moment, this antidote to, it was this kind of, what's that Greek character? The guy's got a Sisyphus? Yeah. It was like this Sisyphusian predicament where I'm rolling, it was like my happiness was this prize I was chasing. And I think that even that, it's like happiness as an achievement is really missing the point. Like joy is something that, that happens naturally when you're not encumbered and burdened by all these.
Well, it happens naturally unless it doesn't, right? Like I've been in like states where joy really doesn't come without a tremendous amount of self preservation, let's say effort or something.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that I'm not saying we're not trying to chase joy. I'm not saying we're trying to chase joy. I'm just saying you're just being with whatever is. And when, in my experience at least, when that relationship is peaceful and is kind of loving and has that devotional quality that I was talking about in the beginning, that just feels a lot better in my body. But I also want to be clear. I'm up here mostly at least tonight. I'm kind of sharing from my own personal experience. I guess kind of in the hope that, well, if anyone relates to it, it might be helpful. But I'm in no way implying that this is like the only experience. And like your experience may be really different. And if you were talking, it would have all these other nuances and other anecdotes and other stories that would maybe totally talk about other facets of this. And I am in no way saying that like my experience or point of view is the right one. And mostly what I'm trying to convey is the kind of, like I said, this attitude and sort of orientation with which I'm relating to the experience. Yeah.
One of the things that you're reminding me of is Nietzsche talks about a camel-lion child, and the ideal state is the state of being a child, and that the camel is kind of the pack animal, and they aren't awake or conscious, and then the lion,
wakes up and they're like, oh, the system's so fucked up and I'm angry and you can hear me roar and it feels really exciting, but it's also you're attached because like you're reacting, you're exhibiting anger because of your relationship to what is, and then moving through that is really being in the perspective of a child where it's like life is absurd and then I just live anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any question that's connected to that statement other than that. I just wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You know, the symbol, kind of the archetype of the child, is part of it is that there's this openness because there aren't a whole lot of expectations yet. It's like what in meditation they often refer to as beginner's mind. You know, you guys have heard that. And a lot of times, I don't know if you guys know, but like for me, when I first came to it, like the beginning was really amazing until I then wanted that again, right? Until like I became a meditator. Because for the first time I just went on a retreat. I had no expectations whatsoever and it ended up being this amazing experience. But then the next time, that's like, well, no, but now I have an identity. Now I'm a meditator. Now I've got, you know. And so that kind of open wonder is lost. But I guess to wrap it up, I guess what I'm saying is that wonder that a child may have is that it's a matter of, is that that's actually available to us even right now. And you can even have that in relationship to very difficult states. Like even depression, you could be like, oh, this is kind of amazing. Like, I just hate everything right now. Like there's actually something kind of remarkable about that. You see, and that by not going to war against it, but you know, like in the classical metta phrases, one of the ones that the Buddha uses is may I be free from enmity. You know, when I first read that, I had to look that word up. But it was like, it means to make an enemy out of something. And that's one of the phrases, may I be free from enmity. And, you know, it's so easy to regard something as an enemy, somebody or something, but even very much our own states, right? Our own thoughts, our own, like, and then that kind of conflict and hatred that arises from that. And what the Buddha is saying is that, hey, there's actually a wiser way to relate to this stuff, which doesn't mean like necessarily, oh, it's all great, but even with something like depression, like, oh, what is this? Like, what is there for me to learn in this? What is there for me to understand? Like, let me not just assume that I know what's what, and it's my job to just dictate to reality how I want it to be. And in our practice, you know, there's a way that I could say that this everything we're talking about is symbolized by the bow. You know, at the end we do that, we do the bow. And you see Buddhists bow a lot. In a way, this whole talk, in a way, now that I didn't think of this ahead of time, but I feel like if I had to describe this whole talk like in a gesture, this whole particular point, it's that. It's the bow. Because you're kind of bowing to what is. It's a kind of humbling of oneself. And more capturing that or leaning in a way towards this humbled, devotional point of view. That's a good note to end on. Were there announcements or anything? No? I guess lastly, you all know about the Dana basket, and you know that this whole place exists just entirely on your donations. So we really thank you and appreciate your generosity and support, which makes this possible. So just to finish up, you just come back to your body. And just see how it is right now. And then notice how you're relating to it. Whatever it is like right now. What's the relationship? And you might find that it is, maybe it's more adversarial than you'd like, but just acknowledge it like, oh yeah, maybe I am kind of battling this, I don't know. You know, or maybe not, or maybe you can let that go. See if it's possible to see this experience as something sacred, even if it's painful, even if you don't like it. But that it's sacred because it is. Because it is what's happening right now. As Ajahn Sumedho says, right now it's like this. May the merit generated by us coming together like this as a community, as a sangha, to support each other's practice, to support the wisdom that arises with seeing clearly, and the freedom that comes with bowing to what is. We dedicate and share this merit with beings everywhere. May we all be free. Thank you.